Good evening, Council President, council members, and all the staff. Thank you for having us here today. You have a lot of important issues before you, as we just heard from the speakers before that I came up. My name is Louis Picani, 160 South Central Avenue, Elmsford, New York. I'm the president and principal officer of Teamsters Local 456. I come before you tonight for two reasons. My first reason is to urge you to pass the Mount Vernon DPW contract with Teamsters Local 456. You have an excellent workforce, from your fire department to police department to all those that work for this great city. Firefighters rush in while others are rushing out. Police officers assist in keeping our community safe. But it's the DPW, water parks, and other departments we represent that keep this city running. They are truly the backbone of Mount Vernon. Without them, all quality of life does not exist. From turning on our lights, turning on the water, flushing the toilets, all the DPW, sanitation and sweepers, they keep our city's streets free from disease and vermin. We don't do our job for praise, but tonight I want to officially thank all the DPW members for their hard work and recognize them for what they do for the residents of this city. Please support this contract that the men and women of DPW so deserve. I am also here tonight as a proud Italian American, not only as the president of Teamsters Local 456, but to urge the city council not to change the great holiday of Columbus Day. Teamsters Local 456 is always on the forefront of helping and supporting organizations in terms of recognizing the importance of celebrating different cultures, groups, and holidays that surround them. As far back as the early 2000s, members of Teamsters Local 456 volunteered and participated in representing the City of Peekskill's Heritage Committee. And with the Teamsters Buffalo Soldiers MCs, we drove in a celebration honoring Juneteenth. This local was advocating for the recognition of Juneteenth long before it was prevalent in the public and the media. On Juneteenth in 2019, I was honored by the Westchester County Democratic Committee, and I mentioned how honored I was to receive an award, but especially on a significant day as Juneteenth. On October of 2020 and November of 2020, Teamsters Local 456 sent a letter to the city of Mount Vernon to recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. It was finally recognized by this council and the mayor, and we appreciate that. Teamsters Local 456 always stands behind what is right. I now stand before you appalled and disgusted that you are considering taking away Columbus Day from the Italian Americans who helped build this country. The city of Mount Vernon has always had a large Italian American population, and to consider eliminating this holiday is a slap in the face to all of those who stand strong by their heritage. I'm demanding and insisting that you withdraw this action immediately. I'm going to start talking faster. To let everybody, all the Italian Americans, but everybody celebrate this. You claim that the motivation of this change is rooted in historical awareness, aiming to move away from the celebrating Columbus. You also claim that the goal is to educate and inspire our community about the indigenous people who originally inhabited our land and the remarkable contributions to our collective history. Moving away from celebrating Christopher Columbus does not erase history, nor should anybody on the city council have the authority or the ability to do just that. Erase history shouldn't happen. If those of you believe and can prove that the wrongs were committed, let's expose the wrongs that have been alleged and prove them, then educate about them, in addition to all of the great things that he also achieved. I would like to know, and I think we all deserve to know, where your negative information came from. Did you speak to any scholars, professors, or any other professionals in this field that would have knowledge of such? As you know, in the world we live in today, there is so much false information being spread via television and media. It is easy, and is that my warning or that's my cutoff? Oh, shoot. Can I say one more thing? Thank you. It is easy and it's done to listen to the media. People should be celebrate and have their own date to have a celebration. I will personally commit to help Mount Vernon in any way possible to help a new holiday for the deserving indigenous people. So in closing, for those who may be in opposition of Christopher Columbus and choose not to celebrate, that's your right, but also it should be right of every American to celebrate the holidays they deserve. I am only one voice tonight. There are so many Italian Americans and others in the community that feel the same way. So please reconsider enacting this proposal and allow us to continue celebrating the great legacy and accomplishments of Christopher Columbus.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so
Picani.
much.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Mark Tedesco. I live at 181 East Livonia Avenue, Mount Vernon, and I too want to speak in opposition to the ordinance to rename Columbus Day. I guess, want to talk about what Columbus Day means when we talk about celebrating a holiday. And it is not an Italian-American holiday. It is a point of pride for Italian Americans. But it was really created for the first time in this nation, recognizing the contributions of immigrants, and for the first time providing respect to people who had been discriminated against, denied opportunity, and for the first time welcomed to the table to participate fully in American life. Something I think we all here feel deeply for and support deeply. In my view, the ordinance, rather than being inclusive of that ideal of a Columbus Day recognizing diverse contributions to America and everyone having a seat at the table, is divisive, pitting one group against another. It's subtraction rather than addition to the goals that we share in trying to build a more just society. Rather than pride in the progress of our nation, it lays blame and tries to discredit one individual for many of the heinous acts that we know were committed in our nation over its time. But there's a tendency now to judge Columbus from the standards of today. He would fail in judging him against the values that we have, the same way that our values will fail in the judgment of people 500 years hence. We try to learn, we try to grow. There was much that Columbus symbolized in terms of courage, skill, the sense of adventure, and the possibility of discovery. And that possibility of discovery that drove Columbus was the same spirit of discovery and exploration that drove the first peoples to cross the Bering Strait into the Americas. They were the first discoverers. They were the first explorers. But it was not different, not fundamentally different. They were looking for the same thing, opportunity, a better life, and they risked everything to get there. The ships that Columbus sailed on were 50 to 70 feet, no wider than this chamber. And yet they sailed across the Atlantic. No GPS, no clear maps, just courage and skill. And again, a spirit of adventure. So I think there is in fact much for all of us to celebrate in the name of Columbus Day, not just Italian Americans, but certainly Italian Americans, and I certainly feel that way. And that's why I think, again, there is much for us to recognize and respect indigenous peoples, but I don't think erasing Columbus and the spirit of the original Columbus Day is the way to do that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ralph Tedesco. I live in 24 East Livonia Avenue, Mount Vernon, New York. On June the 12th to 2023, the President of the City Council submitted resolution regarding enacting an ordinance to rename Columbus Day to Indigenous People Day. This is the resolution that was submitted for you to discuss. That's why we're here. We learned about this resolution, I would say, about 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago. And of course, this has been going on throughout the country. This is not the first time that Columbus Day has been attacked. But Columbus Day, to us, to me, means a lot. Who discovered America? I learned in early grades, Cristoforo Colombo. It's very, very important because we're talking about history now. History that it's ingrained throughout the world. Cristoforo Colombo, an adventurers. He came here on those 3 ships, La Nina, La Pinta, La Santa Maria. But we starting with a resolution to erase history. What is next? What is next? Stevens Avenue, Stevens, that father of the city of Mount Vernon. What is next? There's so many problems in our community and in the world today. Let's try to solve those problems of today. Yes, we're not perfect. People in those days were not perfect, but 500 years of history to this America, to this country. Everybody wants to come. Look what's happening at the border now. Everybody wants to come to this country. They open the borders up. We are paying for the taxes. We are paying for all those people. America, free. Columbus is really there because he created the freedom for every one of us here. By the way, Madam President, thank you for the meeting yesterday that you held where our organizations, Italian American organizations, met with you for good an hour and a half. But at the end, I thought I was going to hear something more encouraging, but you said, no, we are going to rename the day that we celebrate Columbus. I went home a little bit, not too happy. But we're not going to give up like any other explorer in the past has not given up as Columbus did. For us, let's face it, not only for the Italian American, but for everyone in this country. Columbus created the map. Columbus opened the doors for every one of us for freedom that we enjoy today, Now, some of us will remember the feast that we had here on Fifth Avenue, the feast that we closed the streets on Gramerton Avenue. Columbus Day it's a holiday. People got together. Let's build on that. Let's build on the togetherness. Okay. Thank you. But Columbus shall navigate another 500 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, council members, thank you for having us. My name is Lula Carbonara. I live on 237 Westchester Avenue in Mount Vernon. I've been a resident in that place for 53 years, and I raised my kids in Mount Vernon, and I'm proud to be a Mount Vernon person. I'm here tonight, not for myself, but for the Italian Americans. I'm a proud Italian American. I would like to say that Columbus Day should be respected as it was for many, many years. We don't want anything else. For us, Columbus is the guy that brought us over here. It brought us the freedom that my father came here my father came here when I was barely 14 years old. And he came here because he wanted a better life for everybody. And thank God we're all succeeding to doing so. We worked hard, there's no question about it. But Columbus Day is a day that we should respect and continue to respect for the days to come. Not because it's Columbus Day, but it's because it's our heritage, our beginning. And we would like to continue that as long as we can. I hope everybody understands that, because I feel very strongly about it, because I was raised in an Italian household, and I'm still a proud Italian American. And I thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Mr. Tedesco's, Mr. Leo Bernard, well, I know you, so I'm gonna say Lewis. No, I shouldn't say that, Mr. So this is a resident sent a request to the council about renaming Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, as you said, and the president came forth with legislation. At I can't remember which meeting, a few meetings ago. First of all, I want to say from the beginning that I thought that Indigenous Peoples Day should be a separate day. I didn't think it should replace it. I thought it should stand alone as a holiday. I think Councilman Potteet had agreed at that meeting, whichever meeting it was, and we both stated it on the record. Now, there is, and Mr. Tedesco, Ralph Tedesco. Now, we've known each other, it's got to be over 30 years. But one thing, Columbus did not do freedom for people of Black people. So most of what you said, I agree with. I do not agree with that. And I need to state that that is not true. The only people that fight for Black people are Black people usually. Sometimes we have allies and sometimes we don't. They get to pick and choose. We don't when we are Black. So we're friends and everything, but I got to correct you on that. I don't agree with that part. So back to and then we had a proposal subsequent to that to rename Columbus Day Italian American Heritage Day from an Italian American woman who used to work here but lives in the city. So that was the last discussion we had. I suggested that you reach out to the president and speak, and I understand you had a meeting yesterday. I mean, this is my position. I don't believe that you should pick other people's heroes. Like, I have my own heroes and you may not agree with them. And I hear your point about Columbus being there. You've all been consistent in saying that, and that's fine. We thought as a body, what I heard at that meeting was that Italian American Heritage Day was a compromise of sort. So, but from the feedback tonight, I don't know where we're going with this. But from what you said at the end of your statement, some may be voting to change it. I will not, because if someone came in here and wanted to change, well, let me do it like this. We celebrate President's Day. The first 10 presidents owned slaves. So do we start the President's Day after them? They were elected president, so we celebrate President's Day. Here in the city of Mount Vernon, we also celebrate Lincoln's birthday separate. I think we're the only community in the state that does that. The rest celebrated as part of President's Day. As a point, and Lincoln owned slaves. He freed the slaves, but anyway, the history of this country, there are no perfect people. There are no perfect people, but as a community that has over 90 different nationalities, I believe we should respect all nationalities. And nobody has fought with the ICA more than me. I have a track record, and you know that, Ralph. From a founding member of SEPA to my 30 years later, I stand up for Black people, and I always will. But I do that with the expectation that other people should stand up for their communities too. And we need to find some common ground, that we all want this to be the best city it could be, and we want to recognize each nationality for the good that they do. So that's all I have to say on that. Mr. Monroe, I hear you. I read your statement when you gave it 5 years ago. I still believe that Indigenous Peoples Day should be a separate day, separate from Columbus Day, because Indigenous people were here. Nobody discovered, well, people say they discovered America, but the Indigenous people were already here. All the rest of us are immigrants, except us, the enslaved who were brought here. Everybody else is an immigrant here, because they weren't born here. So thank you for coming. And that concludes my remarks, Madam President Brown.
Good evening, everybody. First and foremost, Sabrina and Tommy Dyer, I want to compliment you both because you guys take on so much when everybody else is sleeping and going around into the community to address the homelessness, bring food to them, to bring them clothing, to bring them personal hygiene products, to raise money, to give toys out and refreshments out to the kids on the weekends. It really is something to be commended. And I just want to commend you both for that. Sabrina, I love this idea. I love the idea of a shower that's a trailer. Definitely need to do some fundraising for that. And as Councilwoman Copeland mentioned about being incorporated for 3 years as a 501c3 for ARPA funding is necessary, right? So we have to find some other creative areas to see how we could get this done. But we still have to combat the homelessness, right? So, being president of the soup kitchen, I absolutely know that there has been an increase in the need of, with food insecurity. So I definitely support you on that, and will try and help you as much as I can. Mr. Hanratty, thank you again for coming. Really appreciate your advocacy for the Mount Vernon United tenants. Totally support the contract, and as it pertains, for Columbus Day, I'm Irish American, first generation. Okay, my grandmother on my mother's side immigrated here from Ireland. My other grandparents were here. Okay, their parents immigrated, but I married into an Italian family. Okay, and marrying into an Italian family and having a daughter that's half Italian, I have adopted a lot of the Italian culture. And I adopted a lot of the Italian culture because I wanted to make sure that my daughter understood all of what Italian culture has given to the communities that they live in. So I am not in support of changing Columbus Day, but I am in support, as Councilwoman Copeland said, to having another day identified for Indigenous people, because I think everybody should be able to be celebrated on their own day. So was willing to compromise. If we were going to change it to Italian American Heritage Day, I would make that compromise, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. So, I know the struggles that the Italian community has had. I know the pride that they have in their culture. And I've lived in this community my whole life, and I know how the Italian culture, how we used to celebrate it. And I support Columbus Day, but I also support Indigenous people, and I don't want it shared on the same day. Mr. Tedesco, I want to also recognize you for your years of service here in the city of Mount Vernon, not only working for the city of Mount Vernon, but also for your advocacy for the Italian community, because you have always been the first person I have contacted when I felt the Tony Spillane for the Irish, Ralph Tedesco for the Italian Americans, especially when I felt like they weren't being represented properly here in the city of Mount Vernon. You've always been very helpful to get me materials and to educate other people on it. Jeff Monroe, I heard your speech. Thank you very much. As usual, when you come to speak, you always come with a background of education and a professor-like approach to everything. I do believe that Indigenous people should have their own day to be celebrated. And that's all, Madam President. Thank you.
Mr. Picani, Mr. Tedesco's, Mr. Larbonaro, and Jeff Monroe. Thank you all.
Carbonara. It's
Larbonara. Thank you.
Carbonara.
Carbonara. So why is it
It's wrong on our.
it's on the seat. As I'm sorry, and people often butcher my name, so I'm sorry for butchering yours. Thank you all for being here. We've been debating this issue back and forth. I will just give you my take on it as one of 5 council members. Names matter. There's a fight in the South now about Confederate legacy, right? And so you have some folk who born and raised in the South saying, listen, these statues mean something to us that's positive. You have a bunch of other people saying, yeah, but we don't view it that way. I hear you loud and clear about what Columbus Day means to the Italian American community. But we can't ignore the fact that it has been hurtful to a bunch of other people with having a celebration around Columbus Day. I personally believe that Italian American Heritage Day would be a great compromise, because to me, if the Italian American community is saying, please don't change this because you're not honoring us, well, let's honor you directly, right? Like, why have a conduit that some people view as hurtful as a way to honor Italian Americans, especially in Mount Vernon? We should honor Italian Americans directly by having that day called Italian American Heritage Day. And one last note, in terms of Indigenous Peoples Day, the UN recognizes this International Indigenous Peoples Day as August 9th. One thought, Mr. Monroe, is we could possibly follow the UN's date and not have this choice, right? Again, that the beauty of Mount Vernon is that we're a small city, but we're a very diverse city. That's our strength. So pitting one group against another group is horrible. And so maybe we can have Indigenous Peoples Day on the same day that the UN recognizes it internationally as August 9th, and then have Columbus Day changed to Italian American Heritage Day. Those are my thoughts, Council President. Thank you so much.
I know the Columbus Day thing is a very touchy situation, because as I said in the last meeting, anytime we place anything and create boxes, we create chaos all through this country. Anytime there's some sort of separation where we have to create boxes to make individuals feel certain kinds of ways, we always create some form of chaos and heartfelt discussions, if you will. So we have to make sure that we do right by all people, right? I am very respectful of our Italian culture here in the city. However, I don't tie in Columbus with our Italian persons, because when you think about Columbus, how he killed so many people and how he did so much wrong within this nation, and you can't discover anything that's already been discovered, right? So that's another conversation, but we definitely need to recognize Italian heritage, not Columbus, but Italian heritage. We also have to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day. And of course, this nation, they have replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. And that's always been, and a lot of times throughout this country, that's always been the case. You take what has been hurtful and you mask it with something that's been helpful. And that's why I support Indigenous Peoples Day. I do think we need to create another day that's a Italian Heritage Day, but absolutely Columbus Day needs to be removed. Absolutely, Columbus needs to be removed off there. You can still respect Italian heritage without Christopher Columbus, right? And I say that because we have so much disrespect within our country that causes it to trickle down in our communities, right? Right now, we have someone running for president who caused an insurrection within our country, right? Disrespects our laws, disrespects our women, disrespects disabled persons, and still millions of people still want this person to be president again. And we have to stop things like that. And we have to educate each other, communicate with one another, and ensure that things like this don't go on. All of these things can be addressed. These things can be addressed with simple conversations, meeting each other at the table to make sure we do what's right by everyone. Now, none of us are going to be perfect, but we must be productive, right? So just continue to meet at the table with one another, making sure we're doing what's right by everyone. My vote would be to support Indigenous Peoples Day. They were here, they were disrespected, they were killed, and they were killed under the direction of Christopher Columbus. So after talking to many scholars, after having conversations with Indigenous people, as well as entire heritage people, that's the conclusion I came to. So I know we need to have more discussions. It's always a touchy subject, like I said, when we create boxes, it's always a touchy thing. So, that's all I have for now. Hopefully we'll get some resolve on many of the matters that we're faced with. Thank you so much.
For Mr. Picani, the two unrelated to Descos that came out, Mr. Carbonaro, thank you so much for coming out, and thank you for having a conversation with me yesterday. I've expressed my position on it with you all yesterday and encourage you all to come here and speak, because I think it's important that all sides of any piece of legislation is heard. And Mr. Monroe, I'm gonna kind of loop you into these comments as well. I expressed it to you yesterday, but I think it's important for me to express it here on the public record again, right? I think we've spoken about this for about 3 months now, right? It's been legislation that it wasn't hidden, it was in the public. Mr. Tedesco mentioned that it was put forth in June, and here we are at the end of September, and no legislation is currently active, right? So there's been plenty of time for some conversation around this, and I know it's gone out to a lot of organizations, right? We've gotten the information. Part of what I've said to you yesterday is a lot of it is about Italian American culture. And I don't think there's anyone on this city council who doesn't respect and honor and want to celebrate Italian American culture. I think where we have the disconnect is the removal of Christopher Columbus and his decimation of entire communities, raping and killing people. I don't celebrate that. I don't condone it. I don't believe that is an erasure of history. They changed the laws for slavery. It didn't erase slavery. Slavery is still permanent in society. Black people can still feel the effects of slavery, right? It didn't go away. It's still taught, and it can still be taught in schools. When you change Columbus Day to reflect the people, and Columbus Day was awarded, named Columbus Day because it says in the US Code that he discovered America. We know that is not true, right? So it is a reparative change. It is a change that needs to be made so that history is corrected, so that it is taught correctly in school. Like Mr. Tedesco said, and while I was in school, I learned that Christopher Columbus discovered America. For years, I believed that. It wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that that was false information, right? And I think it's important that we don't continue to let that narrative run in schools, that we start to teach what's actually true of history. I completely agree with Councilman Potteet that we should have an Italian American Heritage Day. I said to you all yesterday, it can be the biggest feast, it can be the biggest festival, and I will support and help plan that if allowed to, right? I do not think it should be on Columbus Day because, like I said to you all yesterday, it is an insult to Native American communities, to Native tribes. It's kind of like going to Poland and saying, hey, let's call the day that Hitler invaded Hitler Day, or let's call it Germany Day, right? It's a direct insult. And that's the same thing that we're doing here if we name Italian American Heritage Day as Columbus Day. I completely think that it should be Indigenous People Day and that we should have a separate celebration, right? But as you've heard, the council members are everywhere. So I think it's imperative amongst the council members today to kind of figure out where we're going to head, what we're going to do, what's the decision, where the majority is, because I think it's leaving people in the community confused about where we stand, right? So we can do it after or during the council discussion, but I think that's what I have to say about Columbus Day. Again, I reiterate, it has nothing to do with Italian Americans. I completely, I'll stop there, right? So those are my comments. Are there any additional city council comments or thoughts that we want to share?